and we are here to support and guide your crew, ensuring their well-being is safeguarded. Along with me today in my group are Sandra Jordan, the yacht purser, Corinne Rayson, the crew coach, Dominic Schmidt from Virtual Pursers, Chandra Robertson from Yachtfolio, and Samantha Morris, purser, on board. Thank you so much for your time today. Unfortunately, another member of our team, Helen Oakley, couldn't make it due to work commitments. Today, we are fortunate to have in our attendance shipping masters and representatives from leading flag states. The aim of this webinar is to introduce you, the crew, to the role of flag, what they do, when and how to contact them. Now, we have received many questions to pose to flag, so just before we get into those, I would like each member of the flag representatives to introduce themselves. Maybe if we can start with Holly. Holly Griffin, would you like to introduce yourself? Thank you.
Hi everyone, thanks very much for having me. I'm Holly Griffin. I'm from the Maritime and Coastguard Agency, so a representative of the UK flag. I am the head of the Living and Working Conditions policy area. So yeah, I'll be here to answer any questions that I can. Look forward to hearing from you.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And who's next on my screen? Alexander von Stein.
Afternoon, everyone. Alex von Stein. I work with the Marshall Islands Registry, part of the Regulatory Affairs Group. And I represent the registry at the ILO. And I'm also in charge of the Yacht Seafarer complaints as well. I'm based in Monaco. So.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And Ivan, could you introduce yourself?
So good morning to all. My name is Ivan Tabone, and I'm Deputy Chief at the Merchant Shipping Directorate of the Authority for Transport in Malta. That's the Malta Ship Registry. I'm a lawyer by profession, and under my direct charge, I have anything related to the human element, which basically is training, certification, and also crew welfare. So that's basically the short intro.
Fantastic, thank you. And lastly, James Hatcher.
Hello. Thanks for the invitation. I'm James Hatcher. I'm the shipping master at the Cayman Islands Shipping Registry, responsible for all elements of crew welfare, including complaints, repatriation, medical, wage disputes and the like. I also, as part of my role, I'm responsible for policy, in particular on ILO issues for the registry. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. As you can see, we have a wealth of information joining us today. Unfortunately, one member couldn't, and that is Martyn Oates from the Isle of Man. So we do wish him a very speedy recovery. If you would like to pose any questions during this webinar, if you would like to use the Q&A icon on the Teams top bar, that would be useful, and we will endeavour to get to them, but we may just run out of time. So without further ado, I shall, if I may, ladies first, Holly, could I ask you, what exactly is the role of flag in the overall structure of the vessel?
Right, so that's a really good question. So there are two authorities that look after large yachts. So we've got the class societies. So you might have heard of Lloyd's Register, RENA, Bureau Veritas. They're responsible for looking after the structural side of things. So surveying that the nuts and bolts of the vessel are in good condition. And as the flag state, we ensure that we monitor that the activities of class are in compliance with the flag's requirements. What the Maritime and Coastguard Agency do is look after the more operational side of the yacht. So this is things like safety management systems and any matters that fall under the Maritime Labour Convention. So things like seafarer employment agreements, accommodation, medical care, complaints, that side of things. So the UK flag produces the regulations that vessels and crew need to comply with, and then we have a range of surveyors who come and inspect the commercial yachts against these requirements. We also inspect the management companies that yachts over 500 gross tons are required to work with, so the shoreside operations as well. So yes, that's sort of where we fit in terms of the running of the vessel, the day-to-day kind of running. We're removed in the background, but we're there having laid out the regulations that the vessels need to comply with for structural safety and health and welfare. I hope that answers the question. If there's any more follow-up questions, then do let me know.
Thank you so much. And I think Samantha, you would like to pose a question?
What is the shipping master and what do they do?
Who's that to?
Oh, sorry, to Alexander.
Right, the shipping master actually is a term mainly used by the UK. It's used by certain flag states, not all. But in general, the shipping master looks after the crew operational side and the crew welfare side. At least from my understanding of the British side. In the Marshall Islands, we have what we call Deputy Commissioner of Maritime Affairs. And if you're belonging to a Seafarers Department or Regulatory Affairs Department, you are in charge of looking at the crew welfare aspect and social protections and the implementation of ILO MLC 2006 on board, amongst other things as well. I mean, shipping masters, I think, James, maybe you can say, you get tons and tons of questions regarding many things, so both regulatory and seafarer related.
How do you find out how to contact the flag shipping master, James?
Hello, I may well add a little bit as I am actually the shipping master, and as Alex said, it's more of a British term, though I think the UK might use superintendent more than shipping master now. But basically, as shipping master, my role is to deal with all crew welfare issues, as I said earlier, including complaints such as for accommodation, food, repatriation, working hours, medical expenses, wage disputes. But unlike the allusion that perhaps Alex made, we are available to crew on all vessels, not just MLP vessels. Any crew member on a privately registered vessel can complain to me as well. Obviously, I can only operate within what's in the law, but that doesn't mean that we can't get involved and engage in any complaints for wages or other things that are not governed by the law, but where we can perhaps through sort of subtle pressure and negotiations help bring that to an end. And probably half of the complaints I get are from pleasure vessels that are not in voluntary compliance. I also handle inquiries into crew conduct and fitness of seafarers to serve and births and deaths, so it sort of covers quite a wide remit. But in terms of how they would get hold of me, and I'm assuming it's the same for others, on MLC vessels there is a requirement to have a onboard complaints procedure which is available to all crew. That should provide the details of who to contact at the authority, the flag authority. Obviously for me that's the shipping master. For the flags it may be different, as Alex said. For them it's a deputy commissioner, and that should be available everywhere. We obviously also have a section on our website, so you can complain directly through that. Obviously that will be more available to private pleasure vessels which may not have a complaints procedure. Obviously we'd encourage everyone to have one, but of course we can't insist on a non-MLC boat that they have one. But given the number of people who get hold of me, I'm assuming it's fairly widespread knowledge. So yeah.
Fantastic, thank you.
No.
Unfortunately, Kareen's internet kind of dropped out on there, and I know that she wanted to ask a couple of questions, so I shall ask them instead of her.
I think
if,
okay, I think I'm back. I'm just
oh, she's back. There we go.
like
Fantastic.
old-fashioned days. I'm going to hold my phone up in the air and hopefully get more signal. Right. So my question, and if you don't mind, I've got a personal example to add to it. Please explain the jurisdiction and legal power. For example, if an incident such as an assault happens at sea. A few years ago, that actually happened and a crew member reached out. And Sandra actually helped me with this case. I reached out to Flag State. I was then redirected to the yacht management company and I didn't find a resolution. I then I'm based in Australia, went to the Maritime authorities in Canberra and I didn't receive, unfortunately, any help. And I just maintained contact with the crew member and just to ensure that she was safe and she was able to depart. So she was on a crossing at the time. So yeah, that question is please explain the jurisdiction and legal power, for example, if an incident such as an assault happens at sea.
Who would you like to direct that to, Karine?
I can see James on my screen there, but I think James just answered a question, so I don't mind if it goes to someone else, Ange. I just can't see everyone on my screen, unfortunately.
Maybe maybe we can do it as 3 flag states. Dr. Taboni as well.
Good.
I'm sure has some additional things. On the first question, we talked about what a flag state does, and one of the first things we actually do is provide nationality to the vessel, and so the laws that apply on board are our own national laws, as well as international regulation comes into play. When something is occurring on board, there's a procedure in place. At the next port of call, there would perhaps be local authorities getting involved. So you also have to differentiate if something happens on board the vessel while in the territorial waters of another country, local jurisdiction takes over. If it's happening in international waters, our national laws apply, but equally the local authorities will get involved at the first port of call. At the same time, it triggers a whole series of events internally, not only in a seafarer's complaint area, but our legal counsel get involved, our accident investigations department get involved. So it should trigger a whole series of events to protect the seafarer and make a thorough investigation as to actually what happened before any consequences are determined. So that's for my.
Thank you. So how efficient can you be if the incident is critical and the person's safety is at risk when you've got to talk to all the parties involved to get assistance? This is what I was struggling because I was really worried for her and the captain was the perpetrator.
I mean, the first thing is to get that person off the vessel and in a safe environment. And that can if they are on board, there's an element of the other, officers on board. It could be the first officer, it could be the engineer, it could be chief stewardess, that they separate the parties involved until the vessel can get to another point of call and you can unload the seafarer, put the seafarer ashore. There might be social services that get involved. It depends on the kind of insult. There might be a medical issue that needs to be looked at, but local police would definitely be there. And I don't know if there are any representatives from Nautilus and or the ITF on this call, the International Trade Federation, but quite frequently we would see immediately a Nautilus or ITF representative getting involved, very, very quickly. So there's a whole procedure that starts to fall into place.
So the vessel was between Gibraltar and heading to Fiji. So if you're right in the middle of the ocean, how do you get that person to a place of safety?
Just put them somewhere aside on board. You know,
Okay.
it's
Mhm.
relieve an off. You know, whoever the other party involved is, you have to get a separation happening
Yes.
there.
Okay. Thank you. I'm aware of time.
You have,
Sorry.
you know, I'd like to hear, you know, Dr. Taboni and also James as well.
Mm.
I'm sure.
So yeah, basically, I'm quite on the same wavelength as my colleague Alexander has said. So yes, there's a series of events that get triggered as soon as we receive a complaint. Of course, one has to see what type of complaint. I mean, the gravity of the situation, because there's an assault and there's an assault. I mean, you can have a physical assault, you can have verbal assault, and it also depends on the level of the seafarer, if you know what I mean. Because if we're talking an assault from a higher official, then it becomes more complicated. Because if it is between okay, so the master is basically in control, so you can talk to the master or the company and you ask for a separation, at least until there is an area whereby either the police authorities can intervene. Of course, we have procedures that we will always inform the local, I mean the Maltese police authorities with the situation, whether it is happening on the international waters or in territorial waters, because through their contacts, then they can contact their counterparts in the port state, and they will take the appropriate action. As Alexander said, sometimes there's even the involvement of unions. We are working always in close contact with the company when we receive such reports. But of course, the first priority is the safety of the persons on board that vessel. So the safety of the crew is always a priority. So there's a whole series of events that get triggered, but the first priority is always the safety. I mean, flag state gets involved. I mean, flag state inspectors get involved, even sometimes the involvement of port state inspectors as well. So there's a chain of events that get triggered as soon as we receive complaint.
Okay. Angela, if you're okay, I think my next question has been answered, so I don't think there's any point in asking that question.
No, that's fine. Holly actually has her hand up, so maybe we can allow Holly the floor.
Hi, no, just to chip into what my colleagues have said there. So it's about getting support off the vessel and support lined up for you when you come into port, isn't it? If you're in international waters and there's something going on, the main thing to do is to get that person to a place of safety on board. But by getting the flag involved, you're then allowing us to get things in motion ahead of coming into port. So like my colleagues were saying, can get the local police involved, get union representatives who are local down to the port. And if the if the assaults come from somebody higher on board, it's understandably incredibly difficult to use the onboard complaints procedure to resolve that situation, because the person who is the source of the problem is the person that you'd have to take that issue to. So what I'm trying to say is that we're there to provide some external support and to start bringing together a network of help for that person who's in trouble, which is basically jumping past the onboard complaints procedures. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. But it's triggering a network of support who can be there in the port when the vessel comes in. So it's really important to get word to us via for UK flag via our email address, which should be available to people on board, but or in the DMLC, just mlc@ncga.gov.uk. So I'm sure we'll come to that later, but yes, just reaching out to let us know as soon as possible so that we've got maximum time to get help to you.
Thank you. I know I'm going to kind of quickly jump in on there because, you know, emailing, sometimes, you know, it could be a weekend. There's not going to be anybody that is going to be there to pick up an email. So definitely, I think the point made about having Nautilus or ITF here was actually a really good point. And maybe I know that we would probably go on for hours on this one, but maybe we can think about getting another webinar together and getting those involved as well. James.
Just a very quick one. I don't have anything really to add to what others have said and just fully concur with all of it. But we actually have a duty surveyor line, and therefore people can obviously it's for any and everything that's urgent. So that is manned 24/7 because obviously we have people all over the world. So it switches, but and they will obviously flag up to me or anyone else if there's an issue like that. So we'll be aware of it. So I don't think you should worry too much about getting a response. Shipping registries, like shipping companies in the merchant world, are well used to working 24/7. Sadly.
Thank you. Dominic, you any questions?
Yeah, I think this leads onto a question of mine quite well, because obviously we discussed, you know, it just depends on the gravity of the situation that you're reporting. So what would you say, what situations would you say were a good time to reach out to flag states, like what stage, or if they're experiencing something specific, like say bullying and harassment, and you know, when can you, because we obviously, I'm going to combine my questions because we're short on time, when would a crew member be able to report a captain or an owner?
Who's that to?
This will be to Ivan.
Sorry, apologies for that. There was feedback. Can you please rephrase your question, because there was a lot of feedback in your intervention?
No problem. Can you hear me clearly now?
There is a bit of noise
not
behind
really.
you.
There's a noise. There's a background noise.
Okay.
If you can use headphones or a talk set, yeah.
I think this might be a bit clearer. So I've got clear internet, yeah? Is that okay?
Yeah, better.
Okay, so my question was, what situations should we reach out to flag states, specifically as pursers or crew members? You know, is there specific situations that require us to reach out, or is it bullying, harassment, or something more serious? Like what stage do people reach out, and in what specific situations? And then often crew feel quite intimidated by captains and owners. So could you tell us when it would be okay to report a captain and owner? Like, is there a specific situation or a specific circumstance?
So Dominic, your question is, let's say, quite, if you want, subjective, because it all depends on what you feel as a threat or what you feel as bullying and harassment. So I can't tell you, do not report this, because if you feel intimidated, if you feel bullied, if you feel harassed, please do report. Please do report, even if it is a minor issue. I mean, we're there to assist. We're there to, of course, I can say it here because I mean, we're talking about reality. Sometimes, yes, we do receive trivial complaints. Sometimes we do receive complaints that after investigation result in something else. So basically, it would be like a personal issue being escalated into a vendetta sort of thing. But yes, we're there to listen. I can't tell you do not report this. If you feel that you have to report to the flag, please do so. It's better to report something trivial that in the end results into nothing than not reporting it and then being escalated into something bigger.
Okay, great. Thank you. And the second part of that question was reporting a captain or an owner of a boat for potential harassment or something like that. Should crew feel comfortable doing that? Because it can be very intimidating.
As I said, I mean, it's up to the crew. I mean, whatever, we have a dedicated email address for that. Basically, it's mlc.tm@transport.gov.mt. It's on our website. So any crew can reach out for any reason and reporting basically any occurrence. So as I said, we will investigate any complaint that we receive.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really helpful.
That's great. Thank you. Chandra.
Okay, so this one is for James. What is your procedure when a crew member contacts you with a complaint?
Okay, thank you. Okay, when someone contacts me with a complaint, it's usually by email, but it may be by phone, but I do try and keep ensure as much is written down as possible. It's all reported, logged and followed up as appropriate. All the complaints made to me are treated in strict confidence. However, should they wish it to be raised with the owner, captain, management, I may have to name the complainant for the complaint to be acted upon. But it'll only be done if it's strictly necessary and only if the complainant has expressly given permission. I'll ask for as much information as possible and advise further to try and resolve it informally. If for instance, it looks like there's no prospect of it being resolved amicably, I may well suggest they might want to go speak to a lawyer, or if it looks like it might be a very, very minor or for want of a better word, silly complaint. I couldn't think the word off the top of my head. Then I will tell them, but more often than not, it is not. There is a genuine complaint, and then so I attempt to resolve it informally with them. Suggest if for instance their wages are only a couple of days late, I suggest they follow up before involving me formally, but say they've got in touch with me. Obviously, if the informal resolution isn't successful, and it normally is, I'll gather as much information as possible, and then when given express permission, I'll write to the owner, master or management, whichever one they give me the permission to write to. I will tend to prefer management if there is ISM management, especially if it's the MLC ship owner as well, which obviously they're liable then, so it's always best to go to them to start a sort of mediation negotiation process. That's normally successful, but if it does prove unsuccessful, then there is the option under the law to have a formal shipping master decision, which is binding on both parties, where basically I will consider both sides and make a decision. Obviously, if it's not an MLC boat, I can't force that, but obviously a court would take a binding decision under a law very seriously, I would suspect. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. And then one more question. How many complaints do you receive per year, and what is the majority of these complaints about?
Do you want me to take that? I'm happy to. I do an annual report actually on complaints. I've done one for the last 4 years, so I've got quite a good amount of data now on that. And just looking at last year's report, I had 168 complaints last year, which was a decrease and a significant decrease over the pandemic period. Most of the complaints were wage disputes, and they always have been. Though there was a significant drop last year, which surprised me actually because of obviously Russia sanctions issues. I thought there might be an increase, but there wasn't. But other than that, the two main ones are repatriation and termination. Often these three things are tied up together. There was quite a big increase in termination last year, and I think I'm obviously, without knowing the exact reasons, I'm starting to think it might be after the pandemic ended, people started thinking about changing jobs and moving on, and so obviously when termination happens, often there's a bit of a fraught environment, and it does lead to complaints. But yep, they're the three main complaints we get.
Thank you. I can just see on one of the chats, which leads in very nicely to that, is what's the average response time to respond?
I have a commitment to do it within 2 working days, but it's usually much less than that.
Perfect. How about you, Alexander?
Well, mine is in about 30 minutes, but generally, the moment it hits my desk, we start the process. So in terms of, where seafarers complain to, any email address or telephone number of any of our offices, I mean, we have 28 offices now worldwide, they can make a complaint to any email address, any office, and it will arrive on my desk immediately. But also we also have a duty officer 24/7. That's covered weekends as well. So but generally, if it's from the other side of the world, it'll be within a 12-hour period.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I hope that's helped, Julie. Sandra, I think it's over to you now, isn't it?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I think they did answer one of the questions just about what would you do if you are experiencing something uncomfortable on board. And as you said, you should just report it, even if you think that it might be silly. So the next question was more around documentation. So, often when it comes down to making a complaint and having to investigate that, crew will need to provide evidence. So how should they compile the evidence needed in order to appropriately investigate whatever allegation is being made? So yeah, Ivan can answer if you'd like, or even Holly. Yeah, I know Holly hasn't answered in a while.
So you asked me, yeah?
Yes, yeah, you can answer.
Okay, good. So no, as I said, and any complaint will be, any complaint is to be submitted to us. And of course, the more evidence that is provided, the more assistance that you are giving us, basically. So so if you can provide us with documentary evidence, if it is related to anything that is documentary, if it's related to a contract, then of course we would require a copy of that contract, because otherwise we cannot analyze. But if this is, let's say this is a report about bullying or harassment, unless that harassment came in the form of a written form, like in an email or in a written letter, then of course we can't expect to have any written documentation unless there is a police report or anything that can be provided. So one has to analyze each case on its own merits. So yeah, the more evidence that can be provided, yes, as my colleagues have said before me, the more assistance that you would be giving us.
Okay, thank you. Holly, do you have any specific procedure or format in which to compile evidence specifically that might have been, not by email or WhatsApp, or, behavior rather than something on paper?
Hi. Well, so like Ivan was saying, it sort of depends on what the complaint is. The first thing, when it's a matter of non-payment of wages, for example, anything financial or to do with repatriation, would immediately ask to see the SEA, Seafarers Employment Agreement, because that gives us a basis of what you're contractually obliged to be given. It's a lot more difficult, isn't it, when it comes to matters of bullying and harassment, because it's, like Ivan was saying, unless it's something that's come through digitally, unless it's something that you're able to have a trail of, it's so difficult to have that written evidence down. I'm not 100% certain. I'll go and try and find out, but what would happen is if a complaint came through and it was passed through to our large yacht duty surveyor, they would then call the number of the complainant for a conversation about what's going on. I suppose the option of having the situation verified by other people who are around, who can give their point of view, give their evidence, might be an option as well. Sorry, it's an incredibly difficult question to answer, really. I would say as well, with matters of, I noticed somebody in the chat was saying about if somebody's at risk of suicide, the MCA surveyors are there to pick up on infringements of regulatory issues. I would say that if you think that somebody is in mental health crisis, getting the Samaritans involved, mental health experts as soon as possible is also a really valuable resource, because they're trained to deal with people in crisis in that way. Of course, the MCA surveyors will try to signpost whatever they can, but they really are the Samaritans really are the professionals in that area. So I hope that helps in some way. Sorry, it's a very difficult question to answer.
Yes, no, I can appreciate that. I mean, obviously, it's in where I live in South Africa, so we would, compile an affidavit and then, write down the harassing behaviours, and, if you can send a cease and desist to somebody to say, listen, these are the behaviours that you're doing, this is the harm that is causing, please stop it. And then obviously then the next step would be to go and actually file a report at the court. But yeah, I was just, anyway, I know this is why it's so difficult for crew to know what to do. But again, always just recommend that they are writing it down, keeping a notebook, writing down dates and times, who was there,
yes.
who was the witness.
Who was a witness, I think, is a very helpful thing. And just I've just seen that Dean's put in the chat about having a personal log of the situation that's going on, I think is very valuable, so that you've got that you can look back at that history and be able to say clearly when things started, and it's giving you a firm basis to push back on if anybody tries to contradict what you're saying, which obviously worst case scenario. So yes, I think a personal log is a good idea.
Could you ask the captain if something like that is happening, could you ask them to record it in the logbook? Like, when would you ask for something like that to be recorded in the logbook?
That's a good question. I'd be interested to see what my colleagues think. I suppose it depends on the nature of the issue. If it's a direct confrontation with the captain, that might be something that's difficult to do. That would be then down as an official record. So I think if you're in a position to be able to ask for that, I certainly think there's no harm in that, having an official record on the bridge. So yeah.
Great, thanks. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that. Otherwise, I've got another question.
Alexander, and also Dr. Tabone had your hand up quite a lot as well. So maybe those two can punch in.
Dr. Tabone, go first. You were you had your hand up first.
Okay, it's Ivan. So
Okay.
So basically, it's important to highlight that flag states, although we do have a responsibility and we do have authority, but of course then we also, our remit is quite limited, if you want, because we are not police officers and we are not a court of law, because sometimes the requests go over and above, and I can understand that. I mean, sometimes crew are frustrated and they go to the flag state. I mean, it's the first sort of source that they find. But one has to understand that, for example, we cannot arrest a person. We cannot ask a person to go in a room and interrogate him. So we are not police officers. Sometimes, yes, we do get requests for monetary compensation. So that we cannot do because we are not a court of law. We cannot tell a person. Of course, if it's an issue regarding wages, yes, we can force an owner to pay what's due, but we cannot go over and above that. So like damages, for example. So yes, we can assist, but then there may be also the involvement of a personal lawyer that a seafarer may need to consult, but always in the case of serious threat, the first point of reference, apart from the flag, would also be the local authorities of the port, police officers, or even port state inspectors, because then they can guide the seafarer accordingly. Because as I said, those have authority, especially if they need to intervene with certain tactics.
Thank you. Alexander, have you got anything to add on that one?
Well, I think I'll reflect what Ivan said. You know, first and foremost, the flag state is a neutral party. So we have a complaint that comes in. We are looking for the maximum amount of documentation necessary proof or witness statements, etc., that we can look at to try and make an assessment. We have to remain neutral because I have personally seen in certain cases you had a captain that was falsely accused of XYZ just because he was asking the crew to work a little harder. So they ganged up on him. So you can't get into a they said scenario on hearsay. You have to have some proof. A number of these things as well, we create and implement the maritime regulations and the international regulations, MLC. And as part of that, it has a structure. You have an onboard complaints procedure, and you are, generally one of the first questions we're going to ask you is, have you respected the onboard complaint procedure? Have you notified your DP, your designated person ashore, or DPA, or DP or DPA, your management company? Are they aware of what's going on, etc.? So then we try and build as much information as possible. But quite often this can turn into a contractual dispute where, well, at which point it's in a court situation. And I do try and remind seafarers the whole point of MLC was to provide as much land-based structure for employment aboard ships as possible. Now, if you're working in a company ashore and you have an issue with your employer, you're not going to go talk to your local council member or your local representative. You're going to go and talk to a lawyer first. So we might, there's a little bit of confusion as to what our remit actually is. So we're a bit more the local government representative, not a lawyer. And sometimes our response is going to be, this is a contractual issue. Please seek legal counsel. And your quickest route to doing that in many cases is via Nautilus or ITF. Even if you're not a member, you can reach out to them.
Yep. Okay. Great, thank you. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add to that, Sandra?
Yes, so it was just around if there is a seafarer that has had numerous complaints, made against them, and you can see that there is a pattern of behavior there, what can you do in order to, revoke a COC? I mean, obviously, some of the flag states don't actually issue COCs, but you'd be doing the flag endorsements. Is there something that can be done to look into a seafarer that just has had numerous complaints and it looks like it's likely that they are a threat to the rest of their seafarers? So, yeah, I think Holly, you guys certify seafarers. You have the.
So we can't. The only way that we could revoke a COC would be for falsification of information or for going against the conditions of the COC. There isn't a legal basis or a mechanism to revoke it for other reasons. It's got to be directly in line with the basis that the COC is issued on.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's it for me, Angie.
Okay, thank you. Dre, do you have anything that you wanted to add? No, you're all good. Okay. If I could ask Holly then, could you explain the responsibilities, or actually, well, to be fair, I think this will go to everybody. If you can explain your flag responsibilities in regards to the type of yacht, whether it's such as privately registered or commercially registered, a yacht engaged in trade, for example, and perhaps even a yacht below the 24-metre in length. What's your involvement and your responsibilities in regards to that? If maybe you can start off with Holly.
Sure. So private yachts, pleasure yachts, they're not subject to MLC. They can voluntarily choose to meet the standards of MLC and be inspected against them, but it's not a requirement. If you are a commercial yacht, commercially registered, then you're subject to an MLC inspection. And like I mentioned right at the beginning, we oversee the operational side of things, but then we delegate the structural side of things to the class authorities. A private yacht that's under 24 meters in length, again, if it's private, it wouldn't be subject to MLC. If it is an under 24 meter yacht that wants to do work on a commercial basis, it would then be it would then have to comply with the Small Commercial Vessels Code, which is MGN 290. I can put a link in the chat, and then MLC would apply. So the distinction is whether they're operating on a commercial basis or not, but you can run a pleasure vessel and choose to meet the standard of MLC and have a voluntary inspection against those standards. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Think so. Can maybe, Ivan, could you expand a little bit with regards to Malta flag? Is what's your take on your responsibilities as it comes to privately registered or commercially registered, maybe even a yacht engaged in trade as well? What were your responsibilities with that?
So basically, we have three categories, if you want. There's the private yacht owned for private reasons, for personal reasons. Then there's the commercial, and then there's the passenger for which we have two codes. There's a passenger yacht code, and then there's the commercial yacht code, which in a way sort of intersect over each other. Of course, privately owned yachts, although certain, of course, conventions do not apply to them, but we still have the Merchant Shipping Act, which still caters for them, so that even crew engaged on board privately registered yachts are still covered with the Merchant Shipping Act. So with regards to our responsibility to that crew, even if a crew from a privately owned yacht, privately registered yacht, comes with a complaint, even though it's not an MLC yacht, so the MLC convention does not apply to that yacht, we do still have the Merchant Shipping Act that in it has a number of provisions that would still apply for the protection of that crew.
Okay, oh, that's good to know. Thank you. And actually, Ivan, whilst I still have you, I had an email sent to me just before this call, and it is regarding a crew, a captain actually, and I'm going to read this out because it's very prevalent. I'm running a yacht where there are serious financial issues. For the last couple of months, the owner has refused to pay crew welfare. We have no funds for food or apartments. We are in the yard. Salaries have been paid, but nothing else. What can Malta do in a situation like this? We are private and less than 500 gross tons. The payroll company have been of little help, and Nautilus have suggested we contact the Malta Crew Abandonment Officer. What advice could you give this person?
Okay, so the advice, of course, the obvious advice would be to send us that email, and unless you are in copy and that has been sent already, and we will act accordingly. That's 100% sure. Of course, I'm not here to reply publicly on this case, on a particular case, but rest assured that we will handle it immediately.
Okay, that's great. I will definitely inform the person in writing. I am very much aware of time, so I need to sort of see if there's any important questions that have come up into the chat. Whilst I have a quick flick through, is there anything that anybody would like to bring up at all?
Can I just quickly say that I have contacted most of the flags for, on behalf of other seafarers, and they just are really, really open to having conversations and trying to figure stuff out. So please, if you are a crew member, just pick up the phone, give them a call, send an email. Yeah,
absolutely. I think Did lose you there a little bit, Sandra. Lucas said, is the flag state helps back working hours? My situation until a year ago, we used to take as many days off after the cruise period as there were Sundays worked. For example, 1 month of cruising, so 4 Sundays worked and then 4 days off at the end of the cruise. Since a year, I don't have any more shore leave after a delivery or long time cruising with guests. By contract, the captain has the right to decide working hours when guests are not on board. What can they do? Alexander.
Okay. The first thing here is, you know, whether the yacht is MLC compliant or not. They have, depending on the flag state, they'll either have hours of work or hours of rest, and those need to be inspected. They're an inspectable item. If it's a private yacht, you know, C does not apply, and they need to really look at their contract. And this is something I know James, I know Ivan say the same thing we do. If you are working on a private yacht, please, we highly recommend that you put into place some form of a work contract. I cannot legally oblige you to do it, but if you are a seafarer and they're not providing a seafarer's employment agreement, clearly defining the terms of your employment, don't work for them. Don't get in, just don't start. So,
good point. James, can you add to that?
Just a quick addition to that, I concur completely. At the moment, our law does not require a contract, though that will be changing imminently. It is going through the Parliament to require a written contract on all pleasure vessels, which obviously benefits the seafarers, but it also benefits the ship owner too, because whilst everyone would assume it would it benefits the ship owner, it doesn't necessarily, because if you've not got a contract, you can walk off whenever you like and you wouldn't be in breach of that contract. So it isn't just, obviously primarily it will benefit the seafarer, but it isn't just. And on the hours of rest thing, I concur completely, but add a slight caveat from our perspective. If there is an accident, the accident investigator is very likely to consider fatigue issues as a very high priority, and so may the police. So even if there's no requirement to comply with the hours of work and rest under SCDCW MLC, fatigue is still something, and there is a duty of care to seafarers, obviously, whatever registration status it has.
Absolutely. Ivan, I know that you do have to shoot off and you've got your hand up, so please do add something.
So no, further to add further to what Alexander and James have said, basically I'm on the same line with them. It is also my suggestion that whenever someone is going to be engaged on board a vessel that is not basically that MLC does not apply for, which is a privately registered vessel, it's still advisable that they contact a person who has either legal experience to give them some insight on the contract, or else even contact one of the unions, which I'm sure they will assist just the same, just to have an idea of what the contract is about. Because once you sign that contract, then problems will start cropping up. So I mean, it's better to be forewarned.
Absolutely, great, thank you so much. The time has just flown away, as it always does. No doubt we will pick up on this again, because the questions are flying in, and I'm sure that we will have many more after this webinar as well. So I just want to thank every one of you that has joined today, especially our flag state representatives and the members of our welfare group. Thank you so much for your time. For you, the crew, and whoever has joined us, I hope that you have found this interesting and valuable. Please, if you do have any welfare issues, please do email us at welfare@pya.org. For all labour-related issues such as wages, repatriation contracts, please email advice@pya.org. We can, of course, then put you into contact with FLAG, but of course, as you've already heard, they're human beings. They are there for you as well, and you are more than welcome to contact them directly. So for the PYA, obviously we do have joining memberships. If you'd like to join the PYA and take advantage of what they have to offer, there is a basic membership fee of €35. For that, you'll get advice on joining a yacht and your career path, one-to-one assistance with contracts, work, legal and welfare issues, information on the latest yacht crew news, training and regulations, and of course invitation to networking events and workshops and forums. So please do head over to pya.org for information and details upon joining. So that just leaves me to say, have a wonderful afternoon and weekend ahead. We do look forward to seeing you next time. And again, many thank yous to everybody that has joined us today. Wish you a wonderful day. Bye for now.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.